Hello, designers. We are on chapter 6 now. We're going to do our Pacific Trails case study. So, chapter 6 starts with more CSS basic key concepts. One of the learning outcomes, we're going to be able to describe and apply the CSS box model. That's what's going to happen when we are using padding and margins. We're going to be configuring width and height with CSS instead of right within our HTML. Margin, border, padding, all a part of the box model. Center web page content, again, a part of the box model. Apply shadows, little fun CSS3. So CSS3 takes things and gets a little more artistic. Rounded corners, same thing, background images rather than in the HTML. And then we're going to learn how to configure opacity, use the RGBA color, hue, saturation, LA color, and gradients in CSS3. So this is going to be fun. This is where we get to be a little more fancy, look a little bit more professional with things like that. The PowerPoint, this chapter has really good references. I would definitely check it out. It talks about units of measurement, how a lot of things, we have the pixels, and then we have remember the EM, which it's a value that's relative to the font size. So a standard font size in a browser is 12 point. That's like the paragraph. And then, so if you say, okay, well, I want 1.5, then it's like 18 point or something like that. So just stuff to think about there. And then it goes into about width and height property. Very good stuff in the PowerPoint. Makes it really easy. This is the best though, this box model, because it talks about how to kind of imagine, you've got the content in the middle, right? That's like your words. And then around that, you got padding. So how much space is going to be between your content and whatever else is around there. So then it comes with the border, okay? And then beyond that, it's the margin. So how far from the actual sides of the viewport or, the element is the border going to be? So it's really good to take a look at this. It'll help you. Okay, so we are on the Pacific Trails Chapter 6, case study, pages 209 to 212. And the very first thing I do in any of these is duplicate the last chapter's folder. So I can duplicate the entire thing from Atom. Just go to duplicate, and then I'm just going to change the title, and I'm going to have all of the files that I need to complete this project. So let's start with a wireframe. What is new? Back in chapter 5, we had a wrapper, but we didn't do anything with it. Now we're actually going to have a wrapper around the rest of the elements that's still inside the body. So the wrapper is basically going to be a background for all of the other elements contained. The other change here is that it's no longer, the hero image is no longer called divider with large image. Now it's actually called the hero image. What is a hero image, you might ask? Well, it is the oversized banner image at the top of a website. It's kind of like the first site that people have or view of your website. A lot of people also call this the above the fold. And when you have something above the fold, it's the attention grabber. It contains a nice image that makes people go, and then also some sort of title, like the H1 tag. All right, so let's get right into this. Well, first things first, even though it doesn't tell us to do this right away, I want to go ahead and I want to add that divider that we have. Like right now, I'm going to close some things. If I close the body, well, I'm not going to have that much left. I shouldn't, but let's see what else. Okay, so the thing about the wrapper is that it's not wrapping the body. The body is still everything that contains, is basically now we can think of it as the background. Because if we're starting to think about this on layers, the body is kind of like the frame or just the matting, and then the wrapper is going to be the container for all of the elements inside. And a wrapper is, in this sense, they're calling the wrapper the ID. So it's still a divider. So I'm going to start with divider and not a class. I'm using it on ID because it's going to be the same ID for every single page. But of course, I'm allowed to do that as long as there's only one ID per page. Obviously, I don't want to close that here since it's wrapping up my other elements. Sometimes I like to call it a container, and often I'll use the ID container. I'm going to go all the way down to the end, just before the closing body tag, and put in my end divider. All right, so that is going to wrap up everything. And I wish I could show you. There we go. Yep, I can show you. Everything is nicely wrapped up in there. And so the whole wrapper divider then is a part of that body. Cool. Moving on. We're going to go over to page 210. And we're going to get right into the CSS, updating the CSS. Here we go, Pacific.css. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? First of all, I'm going to save this, but I'm also going to open up the preview because I like to watch as things unfold to the lovely changes that we are going to be making. All right, so the first one is editing the body element selector. Okay, let me close all my files so I have a little bit more space. So the body right now, we're actually changing it so that the body is going to be, like I mentioned, our background pretty much. So I'm actually going to put that in, that this is now the background of the whole page, right? So it was white. Now we're changing it to a nice blue color. Okay, I'm going to save that so I get to see. All right, so it's a nice blue color, but everything is over the nice blue. It's not so nice when you think about it like that because, because the problem is that it's no longer accessible. And as much as we as designers like the look of things with lots of colors, our readers actually don't. So we have to be really mindful of what's the standard. And the standard is a light background with a nicely contrasting text. Right now, our text is the nice dark gray, but we're going to want the reading area to be white. So we'll do that. And we're actually going to do that with the wrapper. So that's a little sneak peek. But for now, it's like, well, don't just have it that basic blue. Let's have a gradient. And what's interesting about the gradient is we actually use the background image property, and then the value for that is linear gradient. If we wanted it to be repeating, we could do that, but we just want one. We want one, and we want it from top to bottom. So basically what I'm doing is I'm starting with whatever color that I want, FFF, FFF, and then I'm ending with this same blue color. The reason why we have both, like why don't we just have the background image, right? Well, this is HTML5 or CSS3. And so if for some reason the browser doesn't have that built in, isn't compatible with it, then it's going to default to the blue color, which is great. So let's see if I did it right. I did. Okay, good. So now we've got this lovely blue going from the bottom to the top. Wonderful. What else do we want to do? That's it. And it doesn't repeat. We already did that. Okay, great. Let's move on. So we're still declaring that, hey, everything inside needs to have this dark gray text, and I want it to be sans serif unless otherwise noted in below styles, which we do. The next one is the wrapper ID selector. Now, this is an ID, however, I'm still going to put it in with the global styles because it's basically a global style because the divider is actually wrapping everything else. So when I start with an ID, it's hashtag wrapper. Look at that, I already know what I want to say. And then it knows what I want to say because I have the ID in the index, which is pretty cool. That's why having these linked in Atom is actually wonderful as well. So let's see, we're going to configure this to be centered. And then with a width of 80%, background color, minimum width, maximum width, and a 3 pixel. Okay, so guys, underline each of these if you're having problems with all the things, right? This is kind of like a word problem that we have to read really carefully. So the first one is configure the wrapper ID to be centered. So we're talking about an element here. It's not text, so we can't use text align. Rather, we use a trick, and it's margin. It's margin left, auto, it tells me the value, margin right, auto. And I'm actually going to put these on the same line, and I'm going to give myself a little comment after to say, oops, question mark, asterisk. This centers the elements inside the wrapper. Okay, that is a good thing. Oops, that is what we want. It's not just the text. It's not the text. It's not going to center text. It's only going to center the actual elements. If we were to text align, then everything within the wrapper would be centered, and that's not what we want. The next thing that we do want is a width of 80%. So we want the total width to be 80%. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. Minimum, min width, is not inherent, is 960 pixels. I do not agree with this, by the way. 960 pixels doesn't work when you're dealing with mobile design. I would do like 720 or something like that. Maximum width 2048. I think that's weird too, but that's okay. All right, and then let's move on to. All right, so let's talk a little bit about this. What are we doing? We are making it so that there are constraints upon the width. And the reason why we constrain the width is that it's going to do things. You know what? Let me give really quick. Let me give the white background color so that we can really see what's happening here. White or FFF. I'm just going to do white, and then I'm also going to do the border box shadow, which is kind of like a border. I think it's just box shadow, which is wonderful. And then this is interesting. I'm going to do 3 pixels, 3 pixels, 3 pixels, and then the color. Hashtag. Let's save this sucker. So what I've done is I've given this some depth. I can barely see it over there. Let's see. I may not have done it right. Let's see. All right, the box shadow. Let's make this even bigger. There it is. So here's the problem. Here I am, and because it says that my minimum width is only 960 pixels, well, I have like about, let's see, 1048 pixels across, right now because of my display's resolution. And so I can't even see if it's like this. Like this is like a tablet, right? Well, I can't even see. I have to do this. This is very tacky. But I think what they're trying to do is like show you that, hey, if you put this kind of constraints on things and you're not mindful about how it's going to look on every single device, then you're gonna, you're gonna have issues. And so in the next chapters, when we start doing maximum, responsive design, then we can add even more elements so that we say at the media screen of this, of like 740 pixels, then do this. The width should be 720 pixels or something like that. Okay, so we'll start changing things in the next couple chapters. For now, we're just going to have to deal with this. And I think it's a good lesson because it's annoying. For me, it's annoying. I know responsive design, of course, is huge in our industry right now. All right, so we still do want to have this min width, max width. I would just change it a little bit. I would not have it that large. Also, the reading area is pretty big. So I would have a smaller reading area. And we are going to shorten that up just a little bit in the elements to come in designing, adding stylings to the elements to come. Right now we're going to next change the header. All right, so let's go down and now notice our reading background is back to white with that dark gray text, so that is accessible. It's just easier to read for people. It's not distracting. The blue color in the background would be distracting. So, okay, so now we're actually going to remove our line height and text indent. Those were not CSS3 properties. So let's get rid of those. And what we're going to do is we're going to give the whole header element, which remember is only the H1 tag. Right now, let's see what happens. So, it's back to it's back to how the header element is size is defined by the H1 tag. So what we're going to do now is make the whole header 60 pixels. So height 60 pixels. I'm going to actually put this up there. Okay, and let's save that. Okay, so there we go. So now we're like, okay, I want it to be a little bigger. I want to give it some space, but I still don't have any spacing around my H1, and that's because there's no padding. And so remember, the padding is around the text. And so let's see, I think it's going to tell us to give it some padding, right? Center text. So we'll go back down to the text properties, give it text align, center, whoops, center, and then back up here, I'll give it a padding on the top of 15 pixels. Okay, so 15 pixels, 60 take away 15 is like 45. So we have 45 pixels left. Kind of makes sense. Let's see what happens. Okay, so now we've given it basically the size of the text. We've put the padding on top. Now, the other thing that we have is that the H1 element, which is in the next direction, it says add a style declaration to configure the 0 top margin. So what's happening right now is because there is an automatic top margin, The padding is making it so that the Pacific Trails is all the way at the bottom of the element of the header element. So if I put in now in H1, so in H1, I'm actually adding the margin top of 0. So basically, I've taken out the standard top margin and bottom margin that comes with the H1 tag in HTML5. That's the regular styling. All tags, elements in HTML5 have specific CSS properties that exist just as a part of the tag in their programming. And so basically, I'm altering that programming after the fact by saying, hey, no, I don't want the margin, the 0, or the top because I just want the H1 to contain just the text. And then it's going to make it so that it's inside my header that is 60 pixels high and has a top padding of 15 pixels, which is kind of like an estimate for, forcing the H1, the Pacific Trails Resort, into kind of a vertical middle position alignment within the header element. Because you kind of got to trick it. There's other ways of tricking it or forcing a vertical alignment, centered vertical alignment, but that's a little harder than just text align center. So this is how we're tricking it this time, is by using an absolute reference for, or an absolute value for height, giving it some padding on the top to push it down, basically, the Pacific Trails Resort, and then taking away that margin. All right, moving on. So in the navigation, we now want to change the background color to white, which makes sense. Right now it's like this light blue color. Meh, I don't love it so much, so I'm going to change it to FFF white. And then what else does it tell me? Now I'm going to configure the centered text. Okay, so text align again. And padding. I'm doing the entire padding so that it is relative. So it's exactly the standard font size of the browser, which is normally 12 points. So if you notice, it's 12 point above the all the navigation elements and then 12 points below. All right, and it doesn't really affect, since it's centered and there's nothing else, it doesn't affect the right and left. Doesn't tell us to do anything with the links, but I could add padding to the links, which is interesting. So watch this. Let's say that I wanted like more space between, because it's just like standard space, but I would prefer even more padding on the left and right, not the top and bottom. So padding left, let's say I wanted to do like an extra 0.5 EM. So like half of, the regular text size, font size. And then padding right, let me do the same thing, 0.5. And then let's see what happens. So it spaces it out a little bit. This is what I would do because I want it to be super obvious that they are separate entities, separate elements. But notice I had to do it on the actual link itself. So that's not a part of the text, but I wanted to show you a preference. All right, moving on. The main element selector. So we do not have a main element selector. It comes right after the navigation. So let's go ahead and put that, well, in between the divider for the image. So let's give the main a global style. So the property for the main element is going to be 1 pixel top padding, 20 pixel right. Okay, so they're going to do padding all the way around. Padding always starts at the top and then goes clockwise. So you have padding top, padding right, padding bottom, padding left, so clockwise. So they're asking us to put 1 pixel here. So one pixel on top because we already have a little bit of padding and we don't want to like push this down too much because this is our above the fold, what we want people to see right when they come in. So we have 1 pixel at the top, 20 pixels at the right. Over here, we've got another 20 pixels at the bottom. And then we have another 20 pixels on the left. Okay, let's save that and see what happens. Okay. Because main, remember main it has like H2, it's got our paragraph, our list, the divider contact ID, and then outside of that is the footer. So now it has some extra padding down at the bottom before we get to our copyright information in the footer. All right, looking good. Some padding over there, very nice. So that kind of helps the eye, gives it that negative space that we are used to when we're reading. Is there anything else? Oh, Internet Explorer does not support default styles for HTML5 main element. So we're going to add style declaration to nudge this browser to display as expected. So display block. So that's going to be chapter 5. We'll talk more about that. Let's give, okay, so H2, because we really want people to understand that you're going to enjoy nature and luxury, we're going to give it some extra fancy stuff and give it some text shadow. So text shadow, oops, where is it at? Text shadow, here it is. It doesn't give us a default value because we have to kind of add our own, just like we did with the box shadow. And it's very similar. You're going to talk about the horizontal offset, the vertical offset, the blur, and the spread. So I actually kind of skipped over that when we were doing the box shadow. Vertical or horizontal, when it is positive, is always going to go to the right. Okay. And then when it's vertical, the positive is always going to go down, which drives me crazy as a math teacher because the y-axis and xy-axis and yeah, anyways. So horizontal is the first one and that's to the right. So let's just and then 1 pixel vertical, that's going to push it down. So right now we're going to have a shadow that goes to the right and down. And that's just the standard shadow. For some reason, a lot of times we see the sun up in the top left. Yeah, not sure why, but that just is what it is. Okay, and I guess that's actually looking in the south when the sun is in the morning sky. All right, so let's see. Maybe there's something psychological to that. Let's see, text shadow. So 1 pixel, 1 pixel. So then we talk about the blur. So how blurry is it? Is it going to be like a solid black or is it going to be kind of blurry? It's like the border of it. And we want it a little blurry and we want it to spread just a little bit, just so we kind of see it behind and down and to the right. Okay, and then we can give it a color. Make it change whatever color we want. We're going to do gray, but you could do, blue, like a dark blue, which will look cool with this. CCC, CCC. Okay, we know that it's gray and it's like a light gray because it's close to, it's like all letters. No, it feels like we didn't do much here. Maybe I put in too many. I might have. I might have put in too many values, to be honest. Let's see. Not really seeing it. Aha, I did. I put in too many values. My bad. Let's see. Back on page Spread distance. I'm so proud. So, um, positive values configure the shadow. So what I did, I put in on page 192. Oh, nope, that's not text. My bad. Okay, text shadow. Okay, so there is no spread distance in text shadow, and that was my problem. There's only four values. So the first value is the horizontal offset, vertical offset, blur radius, and then color value. Okay, that is why it didn't work, and now it does work. Lovely. So it's again, it's a way to grab your reader's attention. Hey, you really do want to enjoy nature and luxury. I mean, who doesn't? So moving on, uh, we are on to the footer element. All right. So the only thing that doesn't have padding yet, remember, is the footer element. It's sitting all the way down at the bottom. We want it to not sit all the way down at the bottom. We want to give it some space. So all of that is text. I'm actually going to put the padding up at the top. And I'm going to remind myself that this is all text style. I mean, this is kind of obvious, but at the same time, why not? And this is, the element style. I don't need to put that in. I'm just going to do padding 2 EM. So it's 2 times the browser's font size. Okay, so now it's telling me that I want a Home Hero ID. So now what I'm doing is I'm adding 3 different IDs because right now we have 3 pages. We don't have, even though we have 4 pages, we still haven't made the reservations. That's later when we deal with forms. So we have the index, home, yurts, and activities. And each of those images, remember, are different. So now we're going to configure those images rather than in the HTML, we're configuring them in CSS because when we configure them in CSS, when we want to alter the images, we only have to go to one place to do it in our CSS file rather than having to go and alter the HTML in every single HTML page. That is why we love a CSS external style sheet. So let's start with Home Hero. All right, so it's an ID, hashtag, and I'm putting it all the way down in the bottom. Home Hero. And I don't know, I might put it up at the top, but for now, that's what I'm doing. And all of them are gonna have this same thing. The only thing different about these IDs is the actual image, or all of them are going to have 300 pixels height, 300 pixels. So it's, again, giving it a definite size of the picture, which I don't love, but that's okay. And then, because as we move our screen, it's going to mess up. And then because it's going to display the trail background image to fill the space. So now we're going to give it background image, just like we did before, on our header, on our header element. And we want to say image, but it's really not, it's URL. And then inside is coast.jpg, right? And then we're going to make it so that it is 100% background size, which there's lots of things we could do here, contain, cover, but it wants us to do 100%. And 100%. So height and width are 100%. Okay, which is kind of counterintuitive to having the background size 100%, 100%, and then its height is actually 300 pixels. But that's okay. And then it says without repeating, so I'll make sure that we have background, repeat, no repeat, and save that. Okay, so it doesn't really change anything because we don't even have this attached to anything. So let's see what happens when I attached Home Hero. Let me just change it, even though it doesn't tell us to change it let's go in and do that. So right now I have the div ID wrapper. I'm not doing anything in there. Header, navigation, got it. Below the navigation, here's my featured image. And it's not featured image anymore. It's a hero. This is now a hero image. My hero image. Okay. So now I have ID equals, oops, ID is home hero. And notice that it knew, oh, you're attaching this style sheet. So look at what happened. It kind of screwed up. It's like, wait a second. Because right now it's conflicting. It's conflicting. Let's go in and let's just get rid of this. There we go. So it basically looks the same as what it was before, but it allows us to alter things right in one place. So notice because we have that constrained 300 pixels, it gets stretchy and weird. It's not that bad. I think that's probably why they chose this picture, because when you stretch it and it doesn't look that bad. But if you were to start to compress it, like, get it more narrow, it wouldn't look very good. But let's see what happens with responsive design in the next chapter. Okay, so we're doing the same thing. Save this. We're doing the same thing in all the other pages with different IDs. I'm going to copy this guy back on our CSS, and I'm going to do the same for yurts. Change it to yurt hero. And I'm just going to change this to yurts. Oops. Yurt.jpg, right? Yep. Okay. And then it's not going to do anything yet. I'm not even on the right page. Change this to trail hero. This is for the activities page. And I believe it's just trail, right? Trail.jpg. Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to save all this. Nothing changes because I'm not editing that. I'm going to go back to this index, and now I have to add in the IDs and remove the image tags from the other HTML files. And that's what like the nice thing about that is this is the one time I'll have to do each of those if I'm trying to alter the images. Otherwise, I can go into the style sheet instead of having to mess with my HTML, which remember is my structure, not my style. So it's better to do it within our actual HTML. I mean, our style sheet, my bad. Styles or, decoration goes within the style sheet. So let's get rid of that. And this ID is trail. I opened activities first, so it's trail hero. Oh, look at that. It says, oh, here's the style that you want. Yes, that is the style that I want. You're so smart. And I'm gonna preview this now. Control Shift H. There we go. Okay. Okay, so something's wrong. When I initially did this, I'm like, wait a second, what is going on here? Notice that it's got this gradient background. So it still is, the body is still here. So the body is defining the background. We have the divider now. Let's put that in. Divider, the ID equals, oops, let's see, the divider wrapper. Okay, so we have this new wrapper, and I gotta take this, put it all the way down below the closing body tag. There we go. All right, now we have the nice divider for our reading area. Save this HTML. Open up the yurts page. Yurts HTML. close this guy. Right. So first thing I'm gonna do is open up Control Shift H. All right, so there it is. It doesn't have the divider. There we go. Take this. Now notice when I just delete that, your browser will automatically close your divider tag. But you need to close it yourself because it can mess stuff up in the future. So close that tag. All your element tags should be closed unless they don't need to be for some reason, if it's a special type of tag. Look at that. Look at that. We have done all the things because task 3, task 4, we just kind of knocked it out as we went. Task 5, boom, done. Test it. Looks great. Looks lovely. Let's open it up real quick in a browser and let's just see what it looks like. Okay, full on in my browser. It's lovely, right? Even has a default. Oh, that's cool. That's a default part of the browser is to show which page you're on. Yurts, or oh, this is a pre-visited home. Yurts, activities, great. Reservations is nothing. Page not found. That's okay. Go back. All right, we got activities again. Wonderful. So these are actually kind of low resolution photos anyways. We would want to use higher resolution photos. And in chapter 7, we'll learn how to make this even more responsive because right now, if I change to like a viewport of a cell phone, no. I'm going to be like, these people are living in the prior century, which is maybe great if I want to get away with nature and not so great if I want professional. Thanks for watching. I hope this helps you complete your Path of Light Yoga Studio Chapter 6 assignment, which will be something you submit. Have a great time designing. I look forward to seeing your final project soon. Hope you're working on it. Please reach out if you need any help.